To order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented with a special notation for the $327.05 donated for the bake sale, the donation to the junior class, the $86.76 to the Kroger donation to the Lansing debate and forensics team, $133.60 car wash donation to the band boosters, and the Xi Beta Iota donation of $175 to the middle school food pantry.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Danielle, do we have anyone? Has everyone had a chance to look through the items in the finance section? No.
There's nothing.
There's nothing on there except for the checkbook balances and those things.
Okay.
Has everyone had a chance to read the reports from Sharon and from Kevin?
Yes.
Yes.
And we mentioned, Pete mentioned before the meeting about Kevin, and I'll try to have him come and introduce himself to you maybe next month. So you put a face with the name of the emergency preparedness report guy. So
Has everyone read the administrative reports?
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions?
So on one of them, there was like, we were at 2670 or something like that, and we reported like 2650. Is that just a time of count?
yeah,
Okay.
yep. Like what I would have pulled this, I pulled mine on Friday, and they might have, I mean, we could have had 3 kids add in at any point in time. So
Okay, I just didn't know why. It said state reporting is like 13 or 15 or something
Yeah.
less, but okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to pull it, okay.
Elementary late start proposal?
we have some teachers here to talk about our elementary late start proposal. Just a little background for board members. One thing that this is a long time coming through our district leadership team, through their BLTs. They've been talking about this for well over a year. And to be honest with you, it's probably been talked about for well over 3 or 4 or 5 years. And just trying to figure out a way to do some things for them to have more collaboration time. One thing that we know about collaboration, teacher time and teacher efficacy, is that it's one of the highest effect size on student achievement. And so with that as the backdrop, Barb and Amy, if you're ready, our ears are open.
And I just wanted, this is Amy Turner and I'm Barb Robinson. And,
I teach first grade and she teaches second grade.
and she's coming on behalf as BLT rep and I'm coming on as the district leadership team rep. And I just want to thank all the teachers and staff for coming out. And, we've been really shooting for this. So we have proposed in the PowerPoint the late start proposal. And we need additional time necessary for us to collaborate in the state recommended KESA goals that are being implemented. Our district went into the MTSS model and we want to do a good job with that. And this is why we are proposing the late start proposal. The reason why is to discuss student data, intervention, instructional strategies, common assessments, and goals for students. We've seen a lot of success from having additional PLC time through the test scores of the high school and the middle school and buildings. What we're proposing is we would meet on one day a week on a Thursday from 8 to 9:15. Students would arrive at 9:20 with class starting at 9:30. Our aides could help out, collaborate with teachers about interventions and our special ed teachers, and we can collaborate with our paraprofessionals because they help us do the tier 3 or tier 2 kids with interventions, and we need to have time to collaborate with them. We're proposing it to start 2020 to 21 school year. It'd be 1 hour and 15 minutes. If we had it 3 days or less, we would not have that meeting that week. Amy's going to talk about.
So the high school is currently doing this, and so it's giving them about 75 minutes of collaboration time every Thursday. And so that's why we had said Thursday, if we could do it district-wide, it would be great if we were all kind of on the same schedule. And then that way, we would have a little bit more time to sit down with our grade levels and collaborate, like she was saying. If we didn't do it district-wide, then we're looking at wanting maybe K-5 only, but that would cost some extra money because we would have to have a late bus run, and which would be an extra bus run, and we'd have to work out a few other tweaks. So we thought if everybody was on board for district-wide, it would be a lot easier to implement. And when we did propose this to the DLT, everybody was very happy with what we were proposing. They were all very accepting and interested in hearing what we had to say and wanted to see what that would look like for their building. They took it back to their building, talked it over with their BLT. They also went and talked it over to the site council.
We all presented to the site councils, and then we met back at DLT, and we all went through it, and like the middle school, the high school, we're all on board for district-wise. So we're getting all the feedback from our stakeholders. Dan's checked into the breakfast and the buses, and that seems to be worked out, right, Dan?
The buses, Jimmy said, wouldn't be a problem. Most of his staff are retired now. Tim might be driving a bus next year, right? No, he can't for a while. But
6 months.
6 months for capers, and then we've got your application on file. And but it won't be a problem to run the buses an hour late. The breakfast, the only issue that Jennifer, she will have people on duty already. The only issue that we will have to work out, and it won't be a stumbling block for us, is we start lunch at the middle school at about 10:50. And so, if you have breakfast at that point in time, and I have a middle school kid, it doesn't really matter what time it is, they'll eat. So, but that's the one thing that I think that the administration still needs to think about, the best way to serve that in the morning for kids. And more than likely we'll have less people eating breakfast on those days. And that's just part of it at that point in time. But the buses, I was really surprised when I asked Jimmy, because I know that was a stumbling block when we've talked the last 2 or 3 years. No problem. The one thing that we do need to think about, and Mary Alice and I have talked about that with the early childhood program over here, is those times won't change. And the reason that they won't change is that they have some hours that they're required to meet. And if we lessen those by an hour, they would have a hard time meeting the required hours for their grant. That won't affect the buses. Most of those kids are on different buses at that point in time. And if we have to run a second route for a few of them, it would be a minimal cost, Jimmy said. So.
Okay,
Next slide.
uh-huh. So the 1 hour would be used for collaboration, focus on our MTSS intervention implementation, data analysis, and database decision-making. go to the next slide.
So for that, just to kind of give you an idea of what it would look like, we're going to be trained. The middle school and high school have already started this, so our hope is to go and watch a couple of those PLCs being done so we can see exactly how they are implementing it, so, because they are being so successful with it, so that we can get it started on the right foot, in the right way. But you would sit down with your team. We would go over the data from different tests. So 1 week we would meet on, let's say, reading, go over the data from the reading for each kid. And then in math, we would do the same thing the next week. If we gave a chapter test, we could, if Barb and I we were on the same first grade team, we would sit down as a whole group and we'd look at our stuff, and if my kids were really low at 10 more, 10 less, but she did really well at 10 more, 10 less, we could have that collaboration time of saying, well, hey, what did you do? Because my kids didn't get this. What did you do differently? So having that open dialogue, as well as the time to, for intervention, split kids into the correct skill level that those kids are on and what groups they would go with. We had mentioned, we have all hands on deck. So because all hands are on deck, they're on deck on every grade level, so we don't have a lot of time to sit down with an aide or with a parent and say, hey, this is what we're wanting you to, this is what your group is going to look like, this is what we want you to do. So having a little bit more time for that as well will alleviate some of the stress of those aides and paras that they're feeling, because, we're having to quickly tell them right now because we don't have that time. So that's the main goal, and our scores we're hoping will go up from that with that team time collaboration, getting the kids in the right places for interventions. The high school and middle school have been doing this, and you can see that their scores really have gone up since they've implemented it. So that's our hope.
This would provide us to work on our professional development goals. KISA has had us each school pick their goals, and I'm just showing up here LES, our goal 1 for math and reading, and then goal 2 is our instructional strategies, and we really need time to talk about instructional strategies and align our data with everything that we're doing. If you kind of follow that game plan there, you'll see we have our professional learning, our PLC commitments, and then our MTSS, which is reading, math, and our social emotional learning piece that we're trying to get everything in. So, next slide. So going along with the MTSS model, math, we just adopted a new math resource across all grade levels, Go Math, and we're starting to implement our 30 minutes of intervention with our Tier 3 kids, Tier 2 kids, and we need time to talk about those interventions, and you'll see in a few minutes where all of that time element is.
So for reading right now, we are currently piloting new ELA, so we're hoping to adopt one for next year, but that's our Tier 1. For Tier 2 and 3 right now, we have a 30-minute intervention, time daily, where students are grouped by skill deficit, and their progress monitored weekly to see if what we are doing is helping them.
And I'll just piggyback off that. We will be progress monitoring in math, which will be taking more time as well.
And we'll do that once a month.
Once a month.
To see that growth. You won't see it as easily every week with math. It's just a different beast. So we'll be doing that once a month.
So with the social emotional learning on over there, we've implemented a new SEL resource, Second Steps, and we need to have time to implement that into our curriculum and look at that. And then our BLT is developing a school-wide Tier 2, Tier 3 behavioral intervention checklist. So we need time to go through that, like 8-to-1 ratio when you call on a student, different techniques that we can do with our behavioral kids that are coming in. So, next slide. And this is the slide I think is very telling, and I'm going to let Amy talk about that.
So we sat down and looked at the plan time and the collaboration time, or PLC, for each building. So you can see elementary and intermediate for our plan time is 250 minutes, but our collaboration time is 35 minutes, and that actually comes from our plan time. So once a week we are giving up our whole plan time. I know it's 35 minutes, but we actually, by the time we drop the kids off, get to our meeting spot, sit down, start it, and then have to get back up to go get the kids, we're probably about 40-45 minutes that we, so we are actually giving up a little bit more of our plan time to do that. And then if you look at middle school, they have 220 minutes. This is per week. So in our negotiated agreement, we have down that we have to have 215 minutes a week for plan time. So they're over just by 5 minutes, but they have 220 minutes per week for collaboration, where they can, really work in their teams, their different teams. At the high school, they are at 235 minutes for plan time. And then their collaboration time is the 75 minutes with the late start. So you can see for collaboration time, we are, by the time we get started, it's time for us to go pick up our kids. So we really need that extra time to really service those kids, make us better teachers, but also make them better students and see our scores grow. With the late start added, the elementary and intermediate, we would have the 235-minute plan time, because you're going to drop some with that late start being in there. Our schedule will change, but we would have the 75-minute late start minutes for collaboration time. So currently, for the whole month, we are getting 140 minutes. With the late start, we would be getting 300. So that's a significant amount to really, truly delve in and get our things going with what we want to do with these kids.
And with the state, with us working with MTSS, and we have adopted that model, we really want to do well with this model. And that's why we need the more collaboration time.
We're asking for equitable time, that the other schools have, so.
Okay, next slide. So our building leadership team met for numerous meetings, and we did all the pros and cons, and we did it on a big whiteboard. And we went through the early release. We did all the pros and cons of that. It wasn't feasible with high school with sports. We were talking about that. Middle school. We thought about restructuring the calendar. We looked like at Fort Leavenworth, how they do it with their early release, and how to make the calendar different.
And the restructuring of the calendar was also like when our PD days are, so that we could try to see if maybe if we did a PD day a month rather than some of them, like February, we have 2 coming up, trying to spread them out a little bit, but it still just didn't give us the amount of time that we really feel that we need.
We looked at paraprofessional aides covering classrooms, but they have to do the intervention times. We felt like that. We did the pros and cons of that. We tried book buddies at our school, some of our grade levels. Class size was kind of big, trying to work that. So doing
And it also cut into our core time. That's for the state. We have a certain amount of time that we have to be teaching each grade, each subject. And so by doing book buddies, we had to give up, some time either in reading or math.
So we
It's
have
just not
like 90
feasible.
minutes of core time of reading and then the 30 minutes of intervention time on top of that. And then we have the 60 minutes of math and then the 30 minutes of intervention time on top of that. So.
Can you explain real quick what book, nobody up here would know what book buddies are.
Sorry.
And it's important to explain this because
Yes.
it was something that they tried this year that we were like, it's just a schedule, just figure that out. And they tried some things.
Was that K3, 4, 5? How did the book buddies work? Because I'm guessing you guys didn't switch buildings.
No.
So,
So for what we tried was, because of the class sizes, K and 3 went together. It would have worked better K2, but those are our
Big
K
classes.
and second grade, but those are our 2 biggest classroom sizes. So that we would have had like 50 kids to 1 teacher. So basically what they did was third 1 week came over, dropped their kids off with kindergarten teachers, so that then they used that 15 minutes to go and collaborate and do their PLC time, while the kindergarten teachers had 1 third grade class intermixed with their kindergarten class, and they did paired reading. So the kindergartner sat next to a third grader. The kindergartner tried to read a little bit to the third grader. Third grader read a book to the kindergartner. Then they also did like a craft of some sort that went along with a book or something that they had done. So book buddies, because it was 50 minutes, it was too long for them to sit and just read a book for 50 minutes to each other. So we also threw in a craft, where the kindergartner and the third grader paired up and did the craft together. So it's good social skills and getting to know and kind of like a big brother, big sister type thing. But again, it wasn't feasible. The next week, the kindergarten class kindergarten teachers went and dropped their kiddos off with third grade. They did the same thing. But again, it's cutting into the core time. It's a lot of extra prep for the teacher being in there, and it's 1 teacher to however many students, 2 classroom sizes together. So we did try it. And the teachers that did go to the PLC did find that it was very, very beneficial for them to be able to sit down for that 50 minutes, and they got quite a bit done during that time.
One thing that Amy said very quickly there is it was a lot more work
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, you ended up taking another subject in essence and had to plan for that in order to give yourself some time. And I don't think that should be lost.
Well, and with
At
the
the
craft
elementary
too,
level.
you're not just gonna hand it to them.
Right.
I mean, you have to prepare it, get it all cut out and, pass out the I mean, it's a lot of work, so.
We looked at the 4-day week. That would have to be a district thing, so we just kind of shot that one down. We thought, well, we could maintain the current schedule and then keep trying to get everything in that we're trying. And then we talked about, and this was a great brainstorm, additional special staff, maybe having a STEM teacher hired to give us extra time, or having like a science teacher or a Spanish teacher for the elementary, but that's more of a district-wide or a district decision on, with financial and all of that. So we did all the pros and cons. We were really brainstorming on all of these.
And the other thing with the additional special staff that I have brought up, middle school, because the reason why they have so many extra minutes for that collaboration time is the way that they're able to structure their schedule. So they have 8 specials teachers like we do, but 7th grade goes to specials 2 times during the day. Because they only have 3 grade levels there. So, 8th grade goes to specials, then 7th grade, then 6th grade, then it flips. This is when I used to work at the middle school, I'm sure it's changed a little bit, but 6th grade then goes to specials again, then 7th grade again, and then 8th grade again. Well, with our specials, our 8 teachers, they are split between 6 grade levels rather than 3. So there's no way we could do that with our schedule on top of also the minutes that we have to do. So additional special staff, we also said, well, we could always get 8 extra special teachers, although that would be quite a hefty cost. And then we'd also have to figure out where we were going to put those core minutes anyway. So that was something else, just so that you guys realize that's why the middle school is able to have so many extra minutes, is because they have 3 grade levels for those specials teachers where we have 6.
So we've attached the research behind the effectiveness of professional collaboration in PLCs. I'm not going to read through all of that. I'll let you guys read through that. But the next 2 slides show the research why we need this collaboration time to help our students get where they need to be. And then the works are cited at the very end. So we hope you consider this and talk it over. You know, we're all in it. We're all in. So we want to do what's best for students.
In the middle school and high school, I mean, sitting through these BLT with all of the state and everything, they are talking so much about how highly they are getting things done and how much this PLC time really truly does help them. And it's kind of like a desire of ours. We want to be there too. We want to be able to get this foundation laid for these kids so that it makes it easier in this middle school and high school. This is where it starts. And we're lacking on that time to be able to give.
And you know, HESA is mandated through the state of Kansas, and we did adopt as a district the MTSS model. And as teachers, we really want to do the best that we can with that model. But time is the issue right now. And we're trying to cram 100 things in at the same time. We didn't even talk about social science. Yeah, we're trying to get that in too.
It's a lot the state is putting on us to do, and no extra time is being given to us. So we really need this time to be successful. And so we would really appreciate it. And again, I want to thank all of our colleagues that came to support this as well.
Does anybody have any comments?
I think the elephant in the room is how are the parents going to be able to manage that extra hour every Thursday morning when it comes to their jobs?
Right.
Do you have any?
I need to survey them to ask how many that would actually affect. In other districts that have this, they've gotten creative on some ways to do that. I think we can handle. We couldn't handle 1,000 when we were a K-5 building, but I think that we can handle 100, 150. And I think that's about how many, in a school our size, that's about how many kids end up coming. And so our paras will be on duty. I think that we can have activities for them that we can work on. Let's say it might be activities for them to get extra reading and or math help. It might be some additional social emotional learning pieces. But I think that's about what we're looking at on that. The one concern I have is the bus running late, but I think we'll alleviate a few of those issues if we do this district-wide because of the fact that you'll still have high school kids that can watch their younger siblings because everybody's going late. What we've heard from the high school, and I know high school kids are different, those parents actually appreciate that calm once a week where we start a little bit later. I think in our community, we do have some of that flexibility in some of our folks that will appreciate the fact that one day a week I'm going to get up and give my kids something other than a Pop-Tart out the door. That's the Wessel household, by the way. And actually have a little bit of extra time in the morning. And I plan on surveying, excuse me, Sharon and I worked on a survey last week. It just didn't happen last week, so.
Question, you said the paras were gonna be available, and here they're saying they're collaborating with them.
I think that at that point in time, good question, because I asked the same question. There would be some sort of a rotation schedule that we could set up for them. The high school has had to do that at times for those paras and or aides in order to be able to work with certain teachers when they need, those that are giving the math intervention or those that are giving the reading intervention. It would be an opportunity to pull them in, and we could set up a rotation schedule for them to be able to do that.
And those paras and aides, sorry if I.
Yep, good.
Those paras and aides, they don't have to be there the whole time or every single time. It's just that little bit of time that would be there for us to say, hey, we do need to meet with you real quick about what we want, and lay it out and let them be able to ask any questions if they don't understand something and really lay it out for them to understand. But it wouldn't be every single week that we would have to meet with them.
Okay, another question that I have that you guys maybe as a collective could answer a little bit easier. Previously, you guys used to get PD once a quarter as a group, and you would break into pods and they would have 4 substitutes. Is that something that would, a while ago, you guys used to get 1 day a quarter with coverage and you guys would work in pods. This was a while ago.
That's been a while.
That's been a while.
That was a 3, 4, 5.
That was probably.
Okay, is that something that would also possibly, I know in case we get in the situation where parents are just completely inflexible with a time, is that something that would work if we went into our pods of 4 and we filled in with substitutes so that you guys would 1 day a quarter have that, or is it key for the 1 time a week? That's what I'm trying to.
Each week, well, for us, because we teach multiple subjects, so 1 week would be reading that we would be discussing, the next week math, the next week the behavior, the SEL, and then the following week would be a catch-up of anything that we didn't get done of those 3, or we would immediately go back into reading, because we figure we'll be giving those tests probably around every 3 weeks for chapters. The other concern I have, and I'm hearing other people say too, is for substitutes, we're lacking in substitutes. I mean, we have a teacher here tonight that didn't even go home when she was sick last Friday because she didn't want to have her class be a burden, being split up because we didn't have enough subs. So that's where I would be really, well, and we have to write sub plans, which is more time.
You have to write plans in order to get time to plan.
And the other question I had is, would the interventionist and the instructional coach be in with you guys while you're doing your PLCs?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I have a comment. I think part of the idea of having a weekly collaboration time is that they can use that data to make kind of real-time adjustments to what they're seeing with their kids. If they're only doing it once a quarter, it's kind of like autopsy data. We know things went wrong, and we know we could have done things better, but we didn't have the opportunity to make those micro corrections as we're going along. And that's really the benefit of weekly collaboration time.
John, did you have a comment?
No, they pretty much answered.
They pretty much answered it.
To go along with what Mindy said, in the tech world, if you don't have the computer in your class, you don't have any technology. If you have to schedule it, and if you have to, we really want these communication pieces and that collaboration to become a thread throughout the entire school. And I think that's the reason why the weekly piece is so important for the elementary school especially. We know that if we spend our resources at the elementary school, that it becomes so much easier at the middle school and so much easier at the high school when the gaps are this small instead of this small. When Rob has to teach a kid to read, it's like this. It's a 10th grader at a 2nd grade level. Well, if it's a 3rd grader at a 1st grade level, it's an entirely different monster. And I think that's why that part is important. So.
And my last question that I had for you guys, you said early release was difficult because of sports. Was that the only thing that it affected with after school stuff? with the middle schoolers and the high schoolers?
It depends on, are you saying just
For
elementary
a
doing early
district-wide-
release or district-wide
For
early
a
release?
district-wide early release, was the main portion that it affected just the sports, or middle school and high school, or is that the hurdle with the letting them out in the afternoon rather than starting late?
Well, and then you've also got people that have to leave early if they are coaches on game days, so then you've got it to where you're not able to collaborate with your team during that time, so they're having to leave.
We did look at early release, and we did like Fort Leavenworth's schedule, but like you said, if the coach has to leave, they can't be collaborating with the team. You have to be restructuring the calendar.
And I would think that the early release could potentially cause just as many issues with parents as late start. It would be the same thing, just the opposite. My comments are, I know that you guys are being mandated to do so much more in the classrooms than you ever have before. KEIS is wonderful, but then that's, the flip side of it is all the extra work and stuff. And as a board, I know we've discussed concerns about test scores and, doing whatever we can to get our district's test scores to, be the best that they can be. But on the other side of that, I work with a lot of parents. And I just can't imagine that they aren't going to really freak out about this, even though it's just 1 hour a week. I know Dan mentioned the possibility of 150. We've got, 1,100 students, K through 5. I wouldn't be shocked if it was half of those that would need, something that hour in the morning. And, I'm not saying that's a deal breaker, but I would really like to see what those parent surveys look like and see if we're on the right track.
I would have to echo that. I think this is a great idea. Don't misunderstand my concern, because I think you teachers do need the collaboration time. You do need the PLC. I think Dr. Wells' comment about being able to make adjustments in live time is for real. And I understand why, if you're making that adjustment a quarter later, it doesn't really matter, because you're not really affecting real change with real children. That being said, we've got to figure out what the parents are going to do. If there's a plan, if there's a place somewhere for them to go, somewhere for them to be at the school, we have to work that part of it out. So what I'd like to do is give Dan this month to figure out the survey, how many kids we're talking about, what we need to do, and come up with a plan for that time. And I don't want you to think that doesn't mean we're not supporting the idea. We just need to flesh out the other part of it.
And I truly appreciate all of the alternative things that you have looked at to try to decide, what's the best route to do this with.
Absolutely.
I know it's taken a lot of time and effort, and that's appreciated. So I just think we continue the brainstorming and see where we end up.
Right. I recognize the need. We just have to figure out how to do it.
Dan, I'd like to see, Rob, what does it do to your faculty to let out at 1 o'clock?
Like students out
Yeah.
on 1 o'clock?
Does it change? Because I know 15 years ago when I worked for USD 500 did the same thing, like district-wide, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, 12:30, that's when they let their students go. I'd like to see when you send out a survey, Dan, if afternoon or morning is better, or, like say, as Pete said, the elephant in the room is going to be the parents on this. And it's probably a toss-up on, you want it in the morning, you want it in the afternoon, your kid, what you're going to have to take care of that. And so I was just seeing if we could ask preferences. I really support this. I know USD 500, when I worked for them, it was a big deal. We as a board probably have to bite the bullet and make some people mad to support you guys, but I would just probably, for my decision, if there's more leaning maybe towards afternoon than morning, maybe we'll take the smaller hit on 600 instead of 700 being mad at us or whatever, but I mean, would that affect you? Whether, I mean, if you get the time, would it matter if it's in the afternoon or morning? I mean, what about you? Would that make your faculty mad? Huh? What's that?
It would matter to me,
Would it?
yeah.
On what avenue?
Well, for one, they've done a lot of studies that high school kids are better from 9 to 3 than they are from 8 to 2.
Okay.
And that would be the number one. Number two is we do have kids leave for a variety of reasons, VOTEC being one of them, that's affected negatively as we move later in the afternoon a little bit more. It involves more of our kids than the early morning does, because we have some leave after or with hours.
My argument to that is, that's their responsibility.
Well,
They're college student when they come to me. And
that is true.
There is, I mean, and our deal is different. Our spring break's different than your spring break, and they're required to come to our classes when you guys aren't.
True, but we still have to get them credits to graduate. If we move that up or take care of business along those lines, then it limits what we can put them into.
Would that also limit the number of teachers who are participating in the PLCs?
Well, that goes without saying.
Why is that?
Well, you have, for one, we're not going to, on Thursdays, we have athletic events.
But does any coach leave at 1 o'clock?
Close. Well, most of our track coaches do. Swimming does.
Debate?
You're catching me off the top.
I know.
That's pretty tough to do, but
Okay.
I mean, I could give you a little more better detailed report if I knew
No, I
that was
just-
something I was going to be asked for.
Is there any magic reason to Thursdays?
No, we said Thursdays because that's what's already been
That's what
implemented.
they-
Yeah.
But district-wide, is there really any magic day that's better than another?
The high school's set up that way. That's,
Right, they're
But there's
I think
a
that
schedule.
it's what works. It's a day that we don't miss a lot of them. It's part of it. We miss a lot of Mondays, we miss a lot of Fridays. Tuesday, Wednesday, I mean, any of those would be possible. I think at the high school, the reason they do it is you've since fixed some of your schedule to fit some block schedule pieces in there that work well late in the week. I think that's probably the reason they do it. What day it is, I don't think would really matter that much. Obviously, probably not a Monday and or a Friday from other school districts that have done it. The other part that can be an ancillary benefit is it also gives parents an opportunity when, and this is a sell job, and I know it's a hard one, for things like orthodontist appointments, things like doctor's appointments. Those are all opportunities for parents to not miss as much school. Not saying that they'll all take advantage. I'm not naive about that, but it does give options for those that schedule things out.
Well, and I know that a lot of our parents, sometimes you can go to your boss and say, this is happening on Thursday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you work with me on letting me come in late or something? I mean, there are things like that, obviously, that are possible, so.
Well, there's other school districts in our county that start late every day. So what do those parents do? I believe Baser starts at like 9 o'clock every day. So what are those parents doing if they have to be there at 7:30?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Can
I
you
know
just
this sounds
David,
bad, but
Yeah,
as a
like that.
parent, it's my job to figure out what my kid is doing. That's my job. I have a high schooler that does not drive. I have to figure out how to get him there on Thursdays. He spends the night at my parents' house so that they can take him. I know not everybody has that luxury, but it was my job to figure it out, And I don't mean to be harsh, but
Well, I think the biggest part on that, Amy, too, is that the more time that we give people to make those plans, the less angst there is.
Yeah.
Most people are pretty
Definitely.
resilient with that, and that's why we wanted to get it to the board as soon as we could. So you all know, it's an exhaustive process at times to get all of the input that we have through our BLT and our DLT. So whenever we bring things to you, don't think that they're whimsical. By any stretch, sometimes they're painfully slow. And you can see the nods in the heads of people who have wanted this for a while. So you all know that. This is an exhaustive process at times.
Well, and change is hard for everybody, so it takes a
So-
minute for people to get used to that concept. So time is good.
So I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting this straight. John, you wanted him to ask a question in there on late start versus early release, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got that down.
Rob, I have another question for you. Sorry.
That's
This
why
one's
you're
an
making the
easy
big
one.
money.
We're glad you're here.
We're glad you came. At the high school, you do the late start every Thursday?
Correct.
So if the high school is doing it every Thursday and they're only doing it on weeks where there's 3 days in a week, that's
Well,
gonna create, we need to all do
Sorry,
this.
that's the same for us too.
Yeah, no, that's the same rule.
Okay, as long as we're all doing the same thing.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, it would be district-wide. Whatever we
we do,
decide,
yeah.
all of the schools would do at the same time.
And we based that off of what they had done because it's being successfully done there.
Right, I just wanted to make sure we were all on the
Rob?
same.
Do you have any kids come early
Oh, any of them.
on late start on Thursdays?
Any of them want to.
Okay, and what do we do with them?
We have a couple locations for them, one would be tutor opportunities in the library, another would be opportunity to bring their friends in the commons area, supervised by any of our adults.
Okay, well, I mean, elementary would need more supervision.
But they have probably more kids than they would if we ran a later bus because they've got a lot of bus kids that come in on that bus and they catch it because that's how they get to school. So they're there because that's what time they can have their transportation drop them off. So they may see some lower numbers as well.
Okay, so
I just wanted to see what he was doing with them in the morning, in case there's the 150 that Dan's talking about possibly, what would a second, he's got a plan of what he does with them, what would our plan be, where would they go? How would we supervise that, who would supervise that, how many would we need, that kind of idea, that's all.
Right.
Right, so what we're gonna do, you're gonna go gather some information, we're gonna revisit
Good.
this next month.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for all your time.
Yes,
hard work
thank
on
you
that.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for being here tonight to explain.
Yes, appreciate being able to ask questions. 7.2, Erin, you're up.
So I turned in a proposal for our band trip. We take an overnight out-of-state band trip every 2 years. This past trip was to San Antonio for the Alamo Bowl, and 4 years ago was Orlando for essentially the same trip that we did then. So Lansing's been doing this since before I came. I did this at my last school, so this will be about I think I counted up, this will be the 10th time I'll take band students overnight out of state. So the goal is just to get our students on a national level and performing at these locations gives them a really cool opportunity to make memories and just kind of show that they can share their music outside of Kansas. So,
You're using a tour group?
we use educational tours. We've used them. Johnny Bryce has used them for years too. Yeah, I think we've used them for the last 10 years.
Is this 1,500 per student?
Per student.
Okay, because I was like, that's
Yeah.
pretty cheap if it's 1,500.
We all know.
It's just the way that I read it for 90 students, I thought.
I did too,
Oh,
Chuck.
yeah,
I
that's
could
per
jump on
student.
it. $50 or whatever.
It is Disney, yeah. So some people look at that price, including I send my own kids too.
No, I
on
thought
that trip.
$1,500
So,
for 100
but
kids.
they do it right, and they treat us like royalty when we're there too. So pretty
Do
awesome.
you have any trouble, Erin, with certain students that can't afford this or have any trouble?
I have. We provide, there's opportunities, and you see them, they come in, that donation. Those kids get pledges for our fall car washing. Yeah, we just got a couple last month. Those were checks stuck in book bags. So, but they can go out and get donations, and several kids have raised most of their money doing that. We've given scholarships. We're in a situation where the boosters are able to give some scholarships to those in need. That's usually a decision I make,
Okay.
but we don't have, last 2 years, we haven't had too many
Good.
that needed that
Okay.
handful on our last trip.
It's good to hear that there's options there.
Yes.
That is an issue.
The kids kind of know you're doing this every 2 years. So if you
Yes.
plan on being in band,
Yes.
you have 2 years to plan.
They've been bugging me forever, for the last 3 months where we're going stuff.
Yep.
I need a motion. I move that we approve the band trip to Orlando as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Aaron, are you looking for chaperones?
Yeah.
Do you pay for that?
I don't know, do I get to pick and choose?
I thought maybe it was a good opportunity for the
I will
board.
tell you, at my last district, my superintendent came with us on every single trip. She had a blast.
Nice.
It was her highlight every year. So.
Can your chaperone get some of that scholarship?
Board retreat.
Board retreat in Orlando. There you go.
We'll just go with you.
There you go.
We're not going to Orlando. I hate it.
Rob, you're up. 7.3.
We'll see. I have a couple things on the list. So it'll be classes for the first part. We are proposing the addition of 3 new classes to our 2021 course booklet for students to pre-enroll in or put down as electives for their class choices. The 3 classes, the first 2 are part of our teaching pathway, and they would be taking them. It's a class, but it really would be done in other either classrooms or even other buildings. So for those kids as well. This gives our kids that are in this pathway more opportunities to experience the classroom and to see what that's like, which is the idea of these pathway experiences. So those are the first 2, teaching observation and education, research, and innovation, and they would slide right into our pathway. The third is beginning guitar performance, and that's something Aaron's been working on, the music department has been working on to try and give kids an opportunity that aren't in band or choir, but still an opportunity to make music at the beginning level. And so this would be designed towards them. We would need to, and Aaron's working on a plan to try and get a base number of guitars so that they wouldn't necessarily have to bring theirs in. If they have one, they could bring it in, but have an opportunity for them to come in and get some storage space, which we think we're working on, and get the number of guitars up to about 20 so that we could provide that for them. So those 3 classes would be what we would perform. They are elective classes. The first 2, we really don't have to have a teacher for them. Mrs. Boland right now meets with some of the kids that do internship hours. These would slide right into that. They meet during our seminar or our gosh, I can't think of the name of it. Anyway,
CCR?
CCR, thank you. Meet during our CCR time, and so it doesn't take a classroom for an hour away from the teacher. And then beginning guitar performance, somebody said, well, aren't we already stretching Aaron thin as it is? And really we have right now 5 classes that he's allowed to teach. A few of those are elective classes, and we just look at total numbers and say, this is what our numbers indicate we can do, and this is where our kids have kind of pushed or asked us to provide more of. So we already had to cut them off and say, we can only teach so many of these classes, and we do that on a pretty regular basis. So, but we like this opportunity for kids to pick up some type of performance or making music instrument that would be new to them. So those are our 3 classes that we are asking to add to the course catalog for this school year.
Thank you. I move that we add the...
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
Yes.
So on the teaching observation, and Mary Alice is in the room, so I'm going to put her on the spot too. But
Yes, somebody else.
is there any way to consider pre-K through 12? Because, you know, I know firsthand that it's important to have a good quality early childhood education teacher. We have it going on in the district, so I just thought maybe food for thought.
I will check to make sure. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, but I don't want to speak because I'm not 100% sure, but I think that could be.
There might be some interest.
Next question.
Yes.
Aaron, do you have any idea of like number of students you're anticipating for guitar?
I mean,
Or is there like a hard cutoff? Like,
yeah, we're really, for the first year, it probably under 20, definitely probably under 18 of that, so.
You know, the other part of the way the high school schedule's built is it married to the high school counselor, so that depends on how many kids are interested in it. And so if Aaron is able to teach beginning guitar performance, and there are less kids that are in one of your music appreciation classes, it's a swap in numbers. I used to live that life when I was a computer teacher. You know, it would be the case that you'd propose something else that you knew kids were interested in, maybe it was website design, and so I'd take 20 kids out of my video production class and they ended up in website design because they're really interested in that. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for that. Kind of a trade-off, you know, something that kids are really interested in versus something that they get a fine arts credit for. And I don't want to overspeak on that, but I think that's really, you know, an opportunity.
This would count towards their fine arts
Yes.
requirements.
Yep.
So, and sometimes sometimes music appreciation is, some of the kids they're not interested, but they need their fine arts credit.
Yep.
So a few of those would much rather be doing something hands-on.
Yep.
Debbie, do you want to check and see if the pre-K can be added to that before we vote on that class?
I don't know if, I think we can go ahead and vote, and then he can look into that, and if it's an option later on, we can add it.
Okay.
Does it work that
Can
way?
I say something?
Yeah.
Back here in the back.
Uh-oh.
So
Speak
we're
up.
talking about, just to make sure I understand, we're talking about having high school students who are on pathway for
Teaching.
child
Education.
development.
Teaching.
Education.
Or education. So the early childhood already does this. We have students who are interested in early childhood and they apply
Oh,
to
okay.
come work in early childhood, something we already do.
Okay.
So I think that the early childhood team would be very open to that.
There you go.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Oh, no, that's great. No, I'm good.
Just checking. I move that we approve the elective classes as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. So the second item on my list was a proposed change in graduation requirements. This would be for the class of 2024, which is this year's 8th graders. When we change the graduation credits like this, we try to do that with the 8th grade class coming in, so we're not inconveniencing classes that are already in high school currently. So right now, this is the credits that we mandate, or the board mandates for our LHS students. In red there you see a computer credit, and it's a half credit, which means it's a semester-long class, and the one class that can satisfy that would be business essentially. I don't know how long ago that was put in there, but I imagine it was more of a keyboarding type situation.
In 1996, it was keyboarding.
It was keyboarding. And so
Just a few days ago.
with one-to-one and the opportunities that all of our students have to work with iPads or computers in their core classes and all their classes, we don't feel like that is what Business Essentials is accomplishing anymore. In fact, Business Essentials would tell you they're not a keyboarding class, they're the beginning part of the business pathway. So what we'd like to do is change that to a career and technical education course, or introductory level course. And so then to the right, we would expand the choices to satisfy that to any of the introductory level classes to our pathways, except for biology and chemistry, which are science classes. We didn't feel like we should have those override this credit. So kind of opening up opportunities for them to satisfy that credit, kind of changing the credit rate a little bit.
Any questions?
Any look into your English and math sections too?
Say that again.
I mean, any look into your English and math sections for like technical writing and
yeah,
math or tech class?
Conversations are being had.
Okay.
We're not ready to propose something like that, but
Okay.
yeah, to what satisfies that.
Right. Different looks of that.
Yeah, I could go into a long diagram.
No,
this is
this
what
is
we're ready
all-
to propose right now. But
Just the start of the talk of it. Okay.
Anyone else? I move that we accept the proposed change in the graduation requirement as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, you're up.
We put out the bid for our bus for this next school year. We'd take possession of these in July, and so we'd owe the money in July. We asked for, as I sent out in the end of the week report, your board report, I believe last 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, we had our requirements that our specifications for all of these buses. What we received back from all of them is from Kansas Truck, Midwest Transit Equipment, and Midwest Bus Sales. On the left-hand side over here where you see bus met all the specs, the only one that met all of the specs is Midwest Bus Sales. Some of that has to do with the fact of a different transmission. And there are some other pieces in there that the buses that the other companies sell just won't meet those specifications. And so that's an important piece to note because right now we have Thomas buses in all of our fleet. And we do that because parts are interchangeable. It's easier for Jimmy to work on those. We're able to do a lot of our own maintenance on those buses because of that. You see that we asked for a quote from the 2018 model 71 passenger bus, and those were the prices. 65,549 from Kansas Truck. Midwest Transit was 70,000, and Midwest Bus Sales 65,600. My recommendation would be the 65,600. It's not the lowest, but it was the one that met all of the specs. And that is a bus that is coming off, and we talked about that, an off-lease bus. The important part with that is it is not someone else's problem bus at that point in time. It'd be like you leased a car, 3 years later you traded the car in because you were done with the lease. There are lots of schools that do that, not in Kansas, by the way. A lot of these come out of Oklahoma. Jeremy, who we work with at Midwest Bus Sales, tries to make sure that we get those that aren't in the cold parts of Chicago with a lot of salt and sand on them. And those buses would have about 30,000 miles on them. Buses will run from our bus rotation schedule. You know, we're looking at getting rid of buses when they have about 130,000 miles on them. So you have about 100,000 miles worth of travel. And the way Jimmy wants to do that is these will actually end up being our trip buses then. When you're sending kids a long ways away, you really want something that's not going to break down on you. And as older vehicles get older, they break down more often. So the other one, and I think this is a good conversation for the board, My recommendation would be to purchase 2 buses from Midwest Bus Sales in their 2016 models. That ends up being 5 years old. You can run those buses for a very long time, another 20 years. That you can do that. I hope that we stay with our bus schedule and we don't have to do that. And the cost there is the $57,900. I believe that the one bus from Kansas Truck is at $49,491. One, it's a 2015. I believe it'll end up, they both say approximately 50,000 miles, but the other part of that is that ends up being a Bluebird bus, and it'd be the only one in our fleet. It doesn't have the same transmission. It doesn't have some of the same features on the bus. One of them, and I never realized this was important, but it's the Midwest Bus Sales has a one-piece front window. That I never knew that was important, but they say when you start going down the road, you really realize that a one-piece is an important part. The other thing is with Kansas Truck, they did not say that they had more than one of those, so I think that might be something that we run into if we actually want to get 3 buses this year. That cost. Notice on the right it says vehicles quoted are subject to prior sale and available in March. It might be the fact that we'll miss out on that. Not that we will, but for the extra $8,000, I believe that us to keep our fleet the same is important. John had asked the question at the board meeting before, and I said attached also is. I did not get that on there, I apologize, but a new bus from Midwest Bus Sales is $84,616. We can purchase as many new buses without bidding them that we want, because those have already been bid through the state of Kansas. They are the lowest. Midwest Bus Sales is the lowest cost of new buses by about $2,000. So my recommendation, and having talked with Jimmy wants as many buses as he can get, because we're trying to really lower our average bus is 10 years old. And when we start to replace something that's 3 years and 5 years old with something that's 15 years old, that average goes down rather quickly. And so he wants to try to get as many as he can. It's interesting talking to Jimmy sometimes. Hey, can we get 5 of those 2016s? And I'm like, Jimmy, that's $250,000. The answer is, I didn't ask for that much money. And so those prices are fairly firm on that. It would be nice if we could buy 3 of the used ones at $53, because you get quite a price break there. But we don't have that kind of money in the coffers at this point in time to get 3 of those plus a 2018. I had asked on our sorry, my brain just quit. On our bus rotation schedule, about $150,000 is what I think we need to start to think about on buses. That's a little bit over that price, but I believe that we can sell 3 of our used buses that we would have, and we would be right at about that $150,000. The question that I believe John, Mr. Dalby mentioned the last time is to not have this be in a silo. We do have some budget in our next piece that we're going to be talking about in some budget work sessions. But so you know, when we do this in July, we have some capital outlay expenses that will be coming off of the books. One of those being the intermediate school. We have the red shell coming off, the intermediate school playground, sorry. The red shell for the baseball field was about another $35,000. The other part at the intermediate school was an additional 65, so we're already at 100 that we won't be spending. We also, out of this year's money, we spent some additional money to put cameras on our buses, and so that's where that money would come from. And capital outlay is for exactly these type of things.
What was the oddball training on the Bluebird?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I can pull up my email and find it.
Well, just knowing what I know, and when Dan and I were in Wichita, I would stick with Midwest Bus. I believe it was Kansas Truck. Some of their buses, they're using a V10 gas motor and tranny that they put in their F550s. To me, it's a boat anchor. You're putting a ton of weight in a vehicle. Midwest said all they use is the Cummins IFVs,
Yep.
which are proven for the last 50 years as a long durable engine. They're running Allison transmission, which is probably one of the most bulletproof transmissions in stock form to hold stock horsepower. So I would agree with Dan that we stick with Midwest, and then whoever's servicing our bus you get into a pattern there. You know what breaks most of the time, and you kind of learn them in that way where you're not working on 15 different styles of car vehicles.
The other thing is that Midwest Bus Sales, if you drive down K7 and you pass the bridge and you look over to the left, that's the Kincaid Auto Group's, Motor Group's headquarters, and that's where they service all the buses right there. Kansas Truck, when I asked them about it, they're out of Wichita, and he said, we work with people local, and we obviously wouldn't expect you to have to drive it down to Wichita in order to service, but I think that Midwest being right there is an extremely important part. They are also the ones, if you saw the red buses in the Chiefs Parade, those are all Kincaid Motor Groups, and they're also the ones working with us on that diesel mechanic piece that I sent out this last week. So they're a good community partner that are right here local in order to be able to service our buses. So the other nice thing about the 2018 is there'd still be some warranty on those, on the transmission and so.
I move that we approve the purchase of the 2 buses through Midwest Bus Sales as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
Jimmy will be excited. And his bus drivers.
Yes, he will.
You mentioned 2.
It was,
Shouldn't it be 3?
It would be 3.
It was 3. I'm
3
sorry.
is as presented.
Yes, 3 as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Which one or 2?
You want me to start this, or do you want to start the work session piece?
I will start it.
Okay.
And then I'll let you finish it. One of the things that we've been talking about for a while is every year we've done can you hear me? I didn't think so.
Can you hear me?
Of course.
Use your command voice, Beth.
Teacher voice.
Yep, there you go.
I figure when the front row is looking blank, they can't hear a thing I'm saying. For a long time, what we've done is once a year we've had a board retreat where we kind of get together and we go in depth on some things, kind of get our new board members on the same page. We spend that time getting to know each other, learning how to work together, developing a vision, all of those pieces. Other years, what we've done is we've had work sessions, whether it was teach the board how to use an iPad because they're brand new, and if we're going to get them to approve them, they have to have seen them before. We did that one year where we learned quite a bit about the technology that we were looking at. We have done curriculum retreats. We've done a lot of different things. And this year we talked about doing board work sessions where we really delve in. A lot of the board is new, where we really delve in to the workings of the board with different topics and things that we need to know more about as board members. And so if you will look up there, I don't know if you can see on Dan's, but it's in here. What we talked about were things like budget, the actual budget itself, because that's something that we really need to take a look at. It comes up a lot. We have a lot of questions that go with budget, and to spend some real time delving into the budget itself. And then in March to talk about budget some more with capital outlay and what goes into that, how that works differently from the general fund.
Since we just spent a lot of money out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. In April, talking about the alignment of the handbooks and how those things work together in May, talking about KISA. KISA really drives a lot of what we're doing in the district, and it's really important for the school board to understand all of the millions of things that the teachers in the district are doing to make KISA come together and work well. And then to talk about assessment scores, not just the state assessment scores, but FastBridge and all of those other assessments that happen within the district. And these are the things that people have asked questions about or rated as something that they're very concerned about. And then in October is the board self-evaluation that we do after the regular board meeting, plus also that month talking about writing across the curriculum. Does anybody have any questions? Dan, do you want to add things?
Well, the reason that we put these in some of the places that we did let's start right in the middle because that makes no sense at all. But the month of May, with our KISA implementation and process, is we have our outside visitation team meeting at the end of April, and we'll get that report back in a couple weeks. So that will be real-time information that that's how we're going to be accredited as a district. And so that is an important part that I think the board understands, what our goals are, why we do some of the things that we do. We have a very aggressive curriculum goal there. And our outside visitation team will give us real-time feedback on our data right there that will be very timely for us to talk about in May. Go back to April, alignment of handbooks for June approval or special education. I think that it's important for us to have that conversation, one or the other. The alignment of the handbooks fit right there because at some point in time in the summer we're going to ask you to approve those, and I think that that's something that we heard kind of on the campaign trail at times is why aren't those more aligned? I think it'd be a good opportunity for the board to really delve into what those handbooks say and ask some questions of our principals. Why is it that you have that in your handbook? And there should be an answer. If they look at you with a blank stare, they should have read their handbook a little bit more because I believe during our meeting today, we had at least 2 phone calls about a question in the handbook that you kind of cringe when you hear those. And I think it's important for the board to understand that. And it says or special education discussion. The other part that is an entirely different monster, Mary Alice, you can correct me when I'm wrong, is how we get funded for special education. The challenges of being able to fund it itself, being able to resource it with people. Some of the challenges that we have that we end up with a lot of teachers on waivers in the special education world because there is a limited amount. And I think it's important that you understand that we transfer money every year to the special education department, no different than any other school district in the state of Kansas. It's also an important part that you understand that, what does that look like and why last year did the reimbursement for a special education teacher was actually less last year than they said it was going to be at the beginning of the year. We don't ever really talk about some of those funding pieces. And so I think we can do whichever one you don't choose as a board work session. I think that we can do that maybe in a couple of sessions here during a board meeting. You move on up to budget conversation about capital outlay expenditures. Mike has worked really hard. We ask all of the principals to lay out some of their spending things that they see in their building. Mike has gone around to a lot of the schools, and that's going to include, a 5-year plan, 10-year plan on some replacements, what we need to think about our parking lots, what we need to think about for our roofs, what we need to talk about with our fleet vehicles, personnel and all of those type of things. Aaron had asked before about depreciation schedules and just the idea of how much money is this really going to take in order to keep our capital plant open. And I think that that's an important part. I know that when we talked about it as a board, when you sent those things in, what are our priorities? And that is something that I think really needs to be a board conversation. And then the last thing, and I sent something, the top thing, about the budget conversation about funds and budget projections. It's just something that with our staff that we currently have and how that all works, the budget conversation about the funds, we started at the board end of the week report this week with what those funds look like and how we get money and when that money comes, and we could actually sit down and do that. We have quote unquote known expenses in curriculum technology, conversations about additional personnel. We need to have those conversations. I know the other question that a lot of board members have is, what does that do for class sizes? And that all, I think, needs to come into that budget conversation that we have during that work session. Down at the bottom, the month of September, with assessment scores, I know that there's a lot of questions about that with the state assessments, pre-ACT, ACT, Fast Bridge Screener. I think it's important that we look at those as a whole and not as a piecemeal thing. Because if we look at it piecemeal, I think that we focus on the wrong thing. For example, we could say, well, we need to fix our ACT scores. Well, is that really our focus? And the answer can be yes. But I think that we need to look at all of our test scores all at the same time and say, well, we're doing okay over here with our Fast Bridge screening data. Why is it, and Tim asked, it's a good one to ask this question, is how does that correlate to our state assessment scores? And those are questions that I think that the board should see all of that at once. Because then it's not a, hey, remember when we talked about that 5 months ago and we put it in an end of the week report, and remember how these two things correlate? And I think that is a perfect time in order to do that, in order to help us set some goals on where we want to see that for next year. The last one is just for you to all to have an understanding of what that curriculum writing process and resource adoption truly is. We're kind of long down the path right now in the ELA, but I think that for especially the new folks on the board, what that process is and how much teacher input there is into that process. In my world, we didn't do June, July, and August. August is crazy, and if teaching staff and administrative staff live through the start of school, we all appreciate that, and that's why we didn't do that. And then just June and July, it's a time that I don't have access to building principals and teachers and anybody else that I would need access to. That's why we took those off. November, there's this little thing called Thanksgiving, and then December there's a little thing called Christmas. And not that we couldn't do them every month, I think that this is a very good start for us. So.
Anybody have any comments? John?
Nope, I'm good.
Debbie?
No.
No? Okay. I move that we approve the work sessions as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. I move that we go into executive session to discuss an individual employee performance and personnel changes pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under COMA, and the open meeting will resume in the boardroom at 8:45.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I move that we hire Mr. Brett Murray as the school psychologist, and that we hire Mr. Chris Bassler as the high school assistant baseball coach.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Do we have any announcements?
I have no announcements.
Okay. Future board member meeting agenda items?
I go ahead, I have something, not board meeting, but go ahead with that, and then I could have 2 minutes afterwards.
Sure. The next thing is when we move to adjourn. Do you want to adjourn first, or do you want
No,
to adjourn
no.
after?
Dan, could you get with Jimmy?
Mhm.
As, I guess, secondly, as a board member, first as a citizen, could you find out who was driving bus 1011 today on 171st Street headed south of Gillum to McIntyre?
Mhm.
At 60, my wife gave up trying to catch him. It's a 35-mile-an-hour zone.
Okay.
Just kind of, it's pretty fast on a county road for our bus.
Got it.
Would there be any way we could get a copy of the parent surveys
Yep.
that you're sending out?
Yep.
Or
What
early,
he's going to send out?
yeah, for the late start?
I'll send that to
Early
the,
release.
to the board when I do that.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, you mentioned something about, and I probably should have brought it up in executive session, but about a student concerning the coronavirus. Were you going to discuss that today, or is that something?
If we would, we'd need to go back in executive
have
session to
to.
do that. So I can send the board an update on that, I
Okay.
think, that would be able to address that, so.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.